Hey, this is Todd. This is a quick video this morning. I wanted to talk about something that, as usual, comes from a post I saw on Facebook that inspired me to take to the virtual airwaves to spend a few minutes to talk about. And that is DMs. So I guess to give the official title, this is my DM tip. DMs, talk to your players, talk to your Warlock players before you decide to mess with Warlocks and their patrons. I know that Warlock patrons, it's the new favorite thing. It's like it seems like a GM Christmas when you get a Warlock player in your party. You just can't wait to get your fingers in there and play around with what the patron wants and how the patron can be used in your campaign, whether it's going to be a third party, whether it's going to be the BBEG itself, the big bad evil guy that they're going to be fighting, whether it's some other force. And it's really exciting and it's really fun. It can get your juices flowing. And it's your chance to bring in demons or devils or chthonic creatures from beyond space and time as we know it into your world. And it's all great stuff, no doubt, absolutely. Gets my juices flowing creatively just thinking about those things. But there's a hidden piece to that puzzle, and that is there's a player who's playing this character, and inevitably when you begin messing with patrons, you're messing with that character. You're often putting them at cross purposes with the party, or potentially at cross purposes with the party. You're putting their class features at risk. You're doing a lot of things that I think, just as far as good manners, but I think also as a requirement, that deserve a conversation. If a player picks a Warlock to play, they may not want to engage in politics with the patron. They may not want to be a secret adversary to the party. They may just want those powers and abilities, particularly in the way the game is played now. Often players will pick classes because of that ability set, not because of the fluff and lore behind it. Granted, the fluff and lore behind the Warlock is pretty darn cool, but because you're going to be taking that fluff and creating potentially mechanical and fictional consequences for that, I think it is the only really fair path is to go to that player and say, listen, I know you've picked this great old one patron, and I think that's great and wonderful, and I love it, but there are some things I want to do with that. Are you okay with that? If not, then I will come up with something else, or I'll leave it alone. But if you are, that would be great, and let's talk about what you could see, what I see for it, what maybe we could see together, and maybe we can come up with a really interesting arc for your character, some really interesting things for them to do. When you don't involve them, you end up springing on them stuff that they feel that they have no choice in. You've taken away their agency. If you suddenly, they've picked a patron and they're going about their business, suddenly their patron's calling and asking them to steal stuff from the party or kill NPCs or do things that may be against what the party's doing, or at least maybe not aligned with what the party's doing. You're asking them to, one, maybe do things that they're not even comfortable doing in the game. Sometimes we just want to play a team game like D&D usually is and just play it as a team. We all want to be part of this group and going. Maybe I'm the player. I don't want to then be working behind the scenes against the party. Maybe I'm into that. Maybe I have that kind of devious mind and I'm grinning ear to ear thinking about all these things I can do to try to keep my secret. But I might not want to. I might not feel comfortable doing that. I don't think it's fair as the GM to put me in that position of forcing me to either choose. And remember, when you're dealing with the patrons, oftentimes this choice means that you're choosing between either doing this thing you don't want to do, either as a character or as a player, and then putting your whole class abilities at risk. Because the next step is, well, if you're not doing what the patron wants, the patron takes away your powers. Ha ha ha. Well, okay, maybe, yeah, in a story, that makes sense. As a game, if I am playing a Warlock and you take away all my powers, what do I do? Maybe I can turn that into something. I think Critical Role had a little bit of an arc there with a character who changed patrons. And that was a neat little arc, and that could be something that works. But I would bet that they talked about that off camera. Maybe they talked about it in one of the non-gaming sessions where they discussed such things. But I would imagine there were conversations about, hey, this is where I think my character's going, and I'd like to dump this patron. And then the GM, in this case, Matt Mercer, saying, great, let's work on how we can do this transition. And these are the kind of consequences you're going to have if you dump this patron. He's going to withdraw his support. That means for X amount of time, you're going to be powerless. Great. That's what the conversation should be like. It should be you and the player sitting down and saying, these are the things in this world that I think are going to happen if there's a great old one doing something. And remember, some of these, they have lore that says, I think, for instance, the kind of chthonic entities may not even know you are siphoning a little bit of their power. It's like you're such a little mite that's just on the sort of magic surface of their skin, peeling off just a little bit of power that you need is not even noticeable. So it's not even necessarily that they have to be paying attention, but if you're going to make it an active participant in the campaign, have that discussion, talk about it. And by the way, it is in the Player's Handbook. Got my Player's Handbook right here. I looked it up because I wanted to see what their guidance was, and I will read from page 106 under Creating a Warlock. Work with your DM to determine how big a part your pact will play in your character's adventuring career. Your patron's demands might drive you into adventures, or they might consist entirely of small favors you can do between adventures. Things that would be essentially downtime activities, or just things that we could hand wave away as while you between adventures you do X, Y, and Z, helping your patron out in some tiny way, right? Not earth-shattering, game-breaking, party-wrecking adventures. What kind of relationship do you have with your patron? Is it friendly, antagonistic, uneasy, or romantic? How important does your patron consider you to be? What part do you play in your patron's plans? Do you know other servants of your patron? And then it goes on to ask, how does your patron communicate with you? And then if you have a familiar, and then maybe other ways, could be dreams, could be visions, could be other intermediaries. Basically what the Player's Handbook is saying is that this relationship of how active a patron is really it's really player focused. It's really the player of the Warlock should work with the GM, and that they should choose how active their patron is in their lives. In that case, it's almost putting it more player first. It's not the GM that's going to decide how active the patron is. It's going to be the player that decides how active the patron is. Either way, it's clear that here in the Player's Handbook, they're saying guidance, it's a conversation. The player should be comfortable with it, and the GM should be comfortable with it. I would say, I would find it hard to believe that a DM would refuse if a player didn't want to take part in sort of a patron nonsense, that they would force it upon them or say you can't play a Warlock. But I'm sure those DMs are out there, and I'm sure as soon as I say that, someone will comment in or say, oh, no, I'll read a story about, oh, no, my DM wouldn't let me play a Warlock unless I embrace these patron possibilities. It's going to be a table-to-table thing. It's going to be a GM-to-GM thing. My point is they put it front and center. First bit about Warlocks, when you're creating one, is you and the GM work together to figure out what role the patron plays and how that is. So if you are a Warlock player and you haven't covered with your GM what exactly the scope of your patron relationship is going to be, do that. Don't wait. Don't wait until it happens in the game and then object. If you're listening to this, if you're reading through your PHB, not that it isn't the GM's responsibility to talk to you, because obviously I'm recording this video from a GM's perspective, and I'm saying it is right, proper, and just good sportsmanship to talk to them about it before you spring it on them and make sure that they're okay with it before you spring it on them. But as a player, do your due diligence. If you're ever not sure, if you're wondering how they're going to respond, if this is a group that you're joining in mid-session, or you're playing online, or it's something at a gaming shop or some other community type situation where you don't know the skinny about how a different GM is going to respond to this, get out in front of it, talk to them about it, because you might be able to head off this question or head off the possibility that you'll get something you don't want by talking to them about it. Anyhow, that's all I have for now. I'm testing out some new equipment, and I thought about live streaming this, but I think I'm just going to record it just so I can have a little bit more control over things, see if the audio syncing issues from the last time. I'm still trying out Wirecast, so I'm recording this through Wirecast, so please let me know if there's anything you spot, hear, sound that seems off. But other than that, happy gaming, and I will talk to you later.